Okay, we finished the top frame, so let's go to the next, electronics and optics, and it brings us to the first step in this operation. So this is where we're going to start.
All right, so this next step then, we're going to start adding these SSR relays. Now, pay very close attention to this because it calls out. So there's a box that comes in, there's a box of 10 of them. They're the GSR2-1 10DAZ. And pay attention to these last numbers here because that's the last bit, because on the next step, you're going to use the 110 DAP, very specific. And then the last one, there's one for the 25 DAZ. So keep those, make sure you put them, I mean, it's pretty clear in the instructions. Just pay attention to what you grab. So we'll start with the first 10, and they mount with the M48. They mount to the back of the unit as you see here. So we're gonna go ahead and get those installed, and then we'll come back and show you what they look like. All right, so nothing remarkable here. These are pretty easy to install, just a simple screw at the top and bottom. And this is the first 10. And then now the next 4 are these 10 DAPs. So those are the next 4 we'll install here. And then the last one is that special one, the I think it was the 25 DAZ. So we'll get all 5 of those installed and we'll come back. But really pretty simple install here, and it goes pretty fast. All right, so all these are installed. Like I said, this last one, mine was the 25 DAZ. Yours actually may be different because mine's a 110 system. And if you've got a 220, then I believe they said this is another 10 DAZ. All right, well, let's move on to the next step. Okay, next up, pretty simple. You've got this, this is just the mounting plate for the PSU. And then you got the PSU, and it takes these 4/8 flat heads. So we'll get that assembled. And next bunch of steps are basically like that, just assembling and getting bases attached. So we'll get this done here. Okay, and then this just installs to the back of the cabinet. So we'll go ahead and get that installed, and then we'll show you what that looks like again. Okay, so the PSU mounted right there, and just got to be careful next to that board. I moved it over as far as possible just because I didn't want any chance of damaging that board. So that's in there, and now we're going to add some splitters. And so instruction calls, there's 4 of these 8-pin and 1 of the 5-pin, and those install along this with those remaining holes there. So I'll go ahead and get those installed. Okay, and those just mount in there, nothing remarkable, just make sure these tabs are down. Looks like it's gonna be fairly tight, you know, wiring up some of the stuff. Once again, I moved this panel, just slid it over far right until the back panel goes on and lines everything up. Okay, and then the next step obviously then calls for these, the 2 8-pin splitters and this 3x3 splitter. There's only one place for 1 screw, and it shows it on the illustration, so shouldn't be an issue. Okay, so for the next step here, it has this soft switch, and to install this, first you gotta pull this out, okay? And keep track of the orientation. There's really only one way you can go in there with the pins, and so just be aware of that. So, and then it's got this little nut back here. So what you normally do is there's a little rubber washer, and these sort of installs, you normally install this front. Okay, so that is the soft switch. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to take this video camera here, and I'm going to leave the lens on for now, and you're going to take it to this 3D mount. Now, it uses the M2 socket heads, and what it says is it can require a bit of force to screw them in. So what I recommend before, especially on 3D parts, is actually take your screw and get it started. So I did the other side already. And then that way I know, because it was actually pretty hard. Now that they're started, I can take the camera in here. I feel pretty confident. Then, now the only thing it doesn't say is to which way to orient the tab, the ribbon. You know, the way it's showing in there, it's showing mounting these two on the inside. I would assume that it's obviously oriented that direction. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in, and you can now probably see how much easier this is going to be. There doesn't look like there's any standoffs here. We're going to go ahead and just show you now. It should require no force, and therefore no chance of damage if you pre-start them. Look at that. Goes right in, no force at all. There you go. So that's just in the future on all this in the instructions. He says a lot. This may be hard. Don't force. Pre-start them. Get them about a third of the way in, then back them out, and then mount your piece. It'll save you a lot of time. Okay. So the next step, it looks like that we're going to take this here camera laser filter and mount it on the front here. On the side you can see there's 2 screws, so it'll mount and it'll cover up that thing. So we'll have to take the cover off at this point. Now, once again, it says it can require a bit of force with these M3 screws. And once again, we're going to pre-start them. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll come back and show you the final. And I would imagine on this filter, be careful handling. In fact, there's these nitrile gloves are rolled up in the bag of where it says optics. In the box of optics are rolled up into a ball and rubber band. So he provides you these nitrile gloves when you're handling a lot of this glass. So I suggest anytime you handle any of the optics, the glass, that you have these gloves on as well. So, all right, let's we'll find the right screws and we'll get this mounted on there. Okay, and there you have it. By pre-starting those, they went in so easy, and this is glass, so you don't need to be cranking down on these screws. Just enough to just touch the surface, and then you're done. I would say this this camera doesn't look as level as I'd like it to be, so I'll have to take a look at that. And maybe it's slanted on purpose. I didn't really see that, so I'll have to take a look at that. Maybe I need to look back at that part. I didn't believe it was slanted, but there seems to be a little slant from there to the window. So we'll take a look at that. Okay, so it wasn't as clear from the illustration, but there is a slant. In fact, these 2 posts here have an angle, and I actually had some little gap between the glass and these posts. So when I slowly screwed it down and it got flush there, it then mated with the surface. It gave a slant, which then makes the reason why the camera slanted and the glass is slanted to give it the same profile. So that's I don't know if you can how you can see that, how well you can see what I'm talking about here, but there's the slant. So there you go. So we discovered something, and I thought, but make sure, yeah, you've got these down so that the glass is touching the top post and meets the profile, so it slants. I didn't have it all the way down. I just was a little nervous cranking on a screw on that glass. So, but now we're all set here. Okay, and after all that, I realized I actually used the wrong screws. It needed the flathead screws, which it actually says that in the instructions, and I totally ignored it. I used the button. So, and now that makes sense because there was countersink holes in this glass. So now I've got the correct screws in there. Yeah, so you know, I always say read ahead. So now it says actually connect the orange 50 centimeter ribbon cable to the cavern. Well, this one here, you don't use. So when you pull this out, just be careful of the orientation. The pins here are on the bottom. So when you insert this, make sure your pins are on the bottom and just slide it straight in there and you'll feel it bottom out. And so do not need this. You use this orange one, and it's labeled actually in the bag. It's called the Raspberry Pi camera cable. So that is, and that was in the cables box. So that should take care of that. All right, let's move on. Okay, so all those previous steps that we did, well, everything was right except the mounting of the camera. So when I finally read ahead, which is what I should have done, and I always tell you guys to do that, I ended up seeing that when this mounts, this cable routes to the right, or the left, I mean, and one of the problems I had was, well, if I did that, it covers up these holes, which I thought that's somewhere where it mounted. Well, this actually, that what I read ahead, this will mount to the cabinet on the inside, and then this will mate up with it, mount there on the back of the cabinet with these M412. And once again, it says it can be difficult. So I actually, when I had everything apart again, I actually pre-threaded these as well, so it wouldn't have any difficulty getting in there. So it's gonna be, you know, a little daring, kind of getting everything positioned in there, but we should be fine. So let's, I'm gonna take it over there, and you'll see in the instructions how it goes. And the cable, obviously, the way it orients now makes total sense, and how it moves to the left side. So, and then threads up through the top of the cabinet, and you'll see that in these next pictures here. So I'll go ahead and get that taken care of, and we'll go from there. All right, so we have installed, and you can see on the instructions how that then routed up in there. So it routes up to the top, and then comes through there, and that piece right there comes up. And thank goodness I pre-started these on the back into this, because it just went in so smooth and just snugged up. So pretty happy with how that went. On the illustration, it's really not clear, but these come in from the back side. It says missing in the diagram, which means that they're not shown. All right, so we've got that piece in, and the next piece is the thermal camera that we'll do next. Okay, realize there's a lot of noise in the background. The shop down below me, they're doing a lot of grinding, so excuse the noise. So the next step then is, it's the thermal camera holder. And so it basically shows the thermal camera. It says it's especially sensitive, it says, to static. So the orientation of this. Now, remember what I said about pre-starting the hole? So I pre-started the M2 screws down in here, and they were a little difficult, but now they go in well. And then the M4A flathead, I just did all 4 holes. And so we'll take our camera here. Actually, let me put my wrist strap on. Can never be overprotected on electronics. Okay, so it's got this cable here. It's called a DuPont cable. It's got the little individual connectors here. So that pops in there. And then this actually sits upside down into the holder. Hopefully everything fits. Good. I don't feel like it's set in there yet. Well, maybe it. Okay, it's on the platform. That doesn't. There we go. So maybe once I get the screws. So I had already pre-started these, so even though it says it may be a bit tricky and hard, it won't be anymore. So Thomas ought to make a note just in his instructions overall that that's probably what he should recommend. Right now I'm just having troubles getting the holes to align. So it is a little tricky in that aspect. Okay, so installing this camera, it was a little bit of a bear. You know, it sits down in here, and when I initially put it in there, that lens, it's a tight fit. And the only way that these screws can sit down in there and flush against it's a little raised panel, you have to push this camera through the holder a little bit further, and it's pretty tight. So I was a little nervous at first, and in order to get these little screws going, so you know, I pre-started the holes, but I was having troubles figuring out where the holes. So I just took a small little screwdriver and poked it through the hole and into the hole, pre-drilled hole until I aligned, and then I was able to drop my screw in here and get it set. So you can kind of see then, let's see how wide. See how it fits in there and slightly sticks out. So, all right, so we've got that in there now, so we can mount it to the cabinet. Okay, so this is the final installation of that thermal camera. So basically, you slide that down into that groove, the back goes into that rectangular, and then slides down, and it slides down in that slot. And there's that little rubber seal that we put in earlier. And then bring it around back here and run that and make sure the wires are all clear. Now, I will tell you, it's not clear in the instructions because you can see from the illustration, it says, you know, use a flathead, and these were countersunks, so they were perfect. But it actually says, put these two screws in and leave these two available. I'm not sure that's what it's supposed to say. I think these countersink are for the two flathead, and these two are left empty. I'm going to read further ahead. I did already, but I didn't see anything yet, but I'm pretty sure that's those two are the ones that are used. Okay, so the next step was just mounting this laser module. It takes these flathead, and they align obviously with the holes on the laser. And we're going to move this over to the assembly bottom cabinet here, and it looks like it mounts right in here. So I'm sure it's adjustable, obviously, once we get the right focal length. So I'm not sure if we keep this protective cap on. It's not clear, but well, for now we'll leave it. It looks like we can remove it with a hex key that came with the unit. The cable also came with this. I'm going to go ahead and put that on as well. I'm assuming we keep it on it, that it's used for this, and there's not a separate one in the kit for now, and then we'll go from there. Now, I will tell you the next step says to use, it gets us into the, after we mount this, it gets us into the galvo, and we start putting this together. It says that we're going to need medical ethanol to help clean the lens. Now, medical ethanol is just 95% ethanol. We should be able to get that at any drug store. So I'm gonna have to stop here and go get some, and be a good stopping point. Okay, I went ahead and assembled this. So there's 4 parts. There's this piece here, this front piece, and you got a back piece, and then you got the lens holder. In the illustration, it identifies the front and the back as 3D printed parts, but not the lens holder. And the lens holder then has a concave shape in it, and that lens, after you clean it, drops down in there, and then that seals it. Okay, now that we've got this assembly done, we're going to mount it into the unit, and it sits right. This piece here sits right in front of the laser. Okay, so interesting fit. This cable that comes out here from that's the video camera. That ribbon comes up along there, so obviously we'll have to bend it around a little bit. And then you can see this mounted here, and the laser, the end of the laser. Now, I'm pretty sure you need to take off the protective cap. So this sits on the end on the laser module. So you just unloosen those 2 set screws, and then it screws off. Okay, so I was incorrect about the protective cap, actually. As you can see in there, I sent it out to Thomas. He says, nope, need to have the protective cap. I thought it was too tight of a fit. Screwed the protective cap back on, put the set screws in so it was a flush, and it's a little tight fit, but then now it does fit in there. And so I think, that's, like I said, there's a lot of things that, you when you go through these instructions, you watch the video, some things are pretty obvious, some things, some of the stuff doesn't look exactly like it is on the illustration as the actual part. And so that's one of the reasons why I have to double check, because, it's just, you just want to make sure you get it right. And Thomas has been available, and that's always been a good thing. But hopefully as we go through these and we update the instructions, we'll take some of the confusing elements out of this so that when you install yours, you won't have some of those questions that I had. So, all right, we'll move on. So the next part calls for this galvo holder silicone sealing and front galvo lid is it, and then this is the sealing. So you've got still should have some left over, that strip that we used earlier. And so this, I already measured it up and trimmed it up. And so it goes right down the base. So I'll go ahead and get that attached. I can trim that with the X-Acto. Okay, and then now you got this other galvo holder here, and it shows needing pieces, the remaining pieces you have to go ahead and fit in there. So one fits down along here first, and then we'll cut another strip, then it fits in there. So we'll go ahead and get those trimmed up and mounted on there. So now we got those rubber silicone on the base of that. So now we can add the safety switch here. Now the safety switch is a little bit different than the picture. It has all 3 pins coming out the front. There's 2 holes here, but they mount right here with the M316. So we'll go ahead and get that mounted up. Okay, so we've then added the safety switch here, but you'll use the top one and the middle one when we do our connections. Okay, so the next step, it says to use the galvo set. So I'm gonna pull this out of here. This is the box that has the galvo. And so I have to take a look and see how the orientation all this works. Orients like this. You gotta be very careful because this has the mirrors on it, and that's what's protecting here. So we need to be very careful to protect those mirrors, and use your gloves so you can see then those mirrors in there. We've got to be very, very careful. So this shows that it talks about some black tape. It says ensure there's black tape covering the galvo motor fixing grooves. So it looks like it's referring to these grooves here, and it says double check their pieces of black tape. It's not clear from the illustration what he means by black tape, so I'm going to send him a note here, but I'm assuming he means that he's talking about these grooves here, what they call the fixing grooves. So this looks like it's going to drop right down in here. So I'm going to check. I think what he means is these grooves, we need black tape to block the laser radiation to go outside the holder. So anytime I see the grooves, I think the grooves there, you can see, and the grooves here at the top, I think is what he's saying is that we need to make sure that we cover with tape. So I'm gonna go get some black tape and get that covered up, and then we'll come back and assemble this with the M420 button head screws that mount these 3 mounting locations here. So we'll get the black tape, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I went ahead and just used the black tape, and you can see now I've blocked out that groove and this other groove. So those grooves now are covered up, and I fixed it with the 3 button head type screws. So we're ready to move on then to the next step, which is basically assembling this into the unit. And what's important about this is when you do assemble this into the unit, you'll see on the back here, there's a little groove. And if you recall from the thermal camera, the wires that came out, those need to be follow through that groove there. And so we'll, because that'll sit over there and those screws will come up over there. So we need to make sure we don't pinch and they go in there. So I'll go ahead and get the right screws for this and we'll go ahead and mount it up and I'll show you the final assembly here. Okay, and now as you can see, we've got this fixed in there, and just so you know, that screw came awful close to that contact, so when you screw that in, just make sure there's no nothing touching that contact there. And you can see, you look down in here, you'll see the wires there. Let's see if I can get in focus. You can see the wires down in there, they're not pinched, and then they come out the back here through that slot that we talked about. So that's what you're looking to do. And now that we've got that in there, I feel like we can move to the next step. Okay, so the next part is just this galvo window holder, and it's two pieces. And so it just takes these simple flathead screws and they screw in there. I will probably need, these need to be flush. This actually goes in the front of the unit through that galvo window. And also the galvo window installs here. And I wasn't sure, it doesn't show it on the instructions. So I asked Thomas, I said, how's this attach? And we use red silicone to attach that. Okay, so the next instruction just calls for this. Now, all this stuff came in the galvo. So the galvo with the mirrors and the board and everything all came in this box. So this is where we found the galvo PSU, and it just goes on the PSU holder, which is just a piece of HPL. It's got two countersunk holes on the back, and so there's only one way this can mount. And so that looks like it goes right there. And so it just uses these M3 screws. So we'll go ahead and get that mounted up, and then it goes into the unit. And so we'll go ahead and also, when you see me come back, this will have been installed and in the unit. Okay, so I combined several steps here. So first we mounted the galvo PSU here. It wasn't clear from the illustration, so I'll send it out to Thomas. Maybe he can make it a little more clear. When you first look at this, it looks like, just from the illustration, that maybe the electrical connections mount to the this side. When I look at my schema up here, and this is kind of how everything's situated on this top, it actually shows it going out the back. So pretty sure that's how it's mounted then, is from the back. And then the next piece then that's mounted is the galvo board holder here. So I'm assuming that's more like a heat sink, and then easily then, for the illustration, mount the galvo board. So all those are in place, so then we can move to the next step. Okay, so the next one shows, it says it's the Raspberry Pi. So it comes in this box here, and it says to use the 20mm spacers. Now on the instructions it says to use the M325, but they're actually M2.5 by 25, so I'll have to have Thomas update the instructions there. Okay, so there's the Raspberry Pi on the spacers there, and you can see how the connections face on there. So that's the Raspberry Pi. We'll move on to the next one. Okay, so then the next part is the Gate 1 controller board. So it just says the SLS4ALL on it, and that'll be oriented up like that. So it'll mount next to the Raspberry Pi. It uses these 5mm spacers as well, and 310 socket screw. So we'll go ahead and get those mounted as well here. Okay, so I've done a bunch of steps here. It's pretty simple. So the next step was the controller board here, and I went ahead and that mounted on the 5mm spacers. You can't really see that, so that just goes in. There's 5 screws. There's one in the middle here, and I've kind of already started doing some of the wiring, so you'll see some of that here. Then got this little looks like a little transformer, I guess, here, and that one also mounts with a little 5mm standoff, so that's pretty simple. And then finally we came over here to the big tree board, and you know what's nice is so I printed out the wiring schema big poster type board, and so when I get ready for the wiring, but also helps me, tells me the orientation of all these electronic components, so that it's easy. So I've got these mounted, and I've got this in front of me, so when I go ahead and wire, it should go, and I'm already finding that's been very helpful. So so now we're basically completed here. Well, one other step that I did was then on the next step was adding on the display holders here. There's the left and right. The left has a spot for the safety key switch, and that just inserts in there, and then there's a collar nut that holds that in place. So that's all the steps that I did. So pretty simple, pretty easy. So at this point now we're complete with all the optics and electronics, and we're into the wiring phase. So that's what we got next.